Denzel and Pauletta Washington have been married for over 40 years, and their relationship is as strong as ever. But what has kept them so connected for 4 decades? It's not just about love or chemistry, and it's definitely not luck, thinking positive thoughts, or good vibes. There's one habit, simple yet powerful, that has played a key role in their lasting marriage. And it's the same habit that can transform any marriage, including yours. This video isn't about their story. It's about how you can have that same habit transform your marriage. The habit that's been a cornerstone in their marriage and that can make all the difference in yours is something that you might already think you know, but most of us are doing it wrong. And that's where problems start to creep in. In fact, it's typically not the big arguments that create the downward spiral in marriages. It's those small, everyday moments where we fail to connect. Problems like miscommunication, a lack of appreciation, neglecting quality time, poor conflict resolution, and feeling emotionally disconnected. These things don't just show up overnight. They build up slowly, like cracks in a foundation. One day, they split the marriage in two. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like you're talking, but your spouse isn't really listening? Or maybe you're the one who ignores him or her. I need you to be honest with yourself because we've all been there. But the good news is this is fixable. To fix it, we need to understand how powerful these things are in our marriage and how one small habit can make all the difference. Again, it's not the big things that necessarily keep a marriage strong. It's the small, consistent habits, the little moments where you show up for each other every day. And there's one habit that stands above the rest, the habit that every successful couple practices, even if they don't realize it. When you use a key to unlock a door at your house, it's imperative that you use the right key. Imagine that the key is the way you respond to your spouse, and the door is the connection between you two. If you're using the wrong key, maybe it's impatience, distraction, or a lack of empathy. No matter how hard you try, that door is not going to open. You can try every key on the ring, thinking that if you just try harder or push a little more, it's going to open, but it won't. No matter what you do, you ain't getting in. But when you have the right key, the key that I'll teach you in just a moment, everything changes. It fits perfectly, turns smoothly, and the door to connection opens effortlessly, leading to a deeper understanding and intimacy with your spouse. Now, before I tell you exactly what this key is, let me share something that has guided my understanding of this topic. In the Bible, in James chapter 1, verse 19, it says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." Let me just ask you this question. What if you did that? What if you and your spouse did that? Do you think that you might have a lot less arguments or perhaps a lot less misunderstandings? I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but I know that there is so much wisdom that can be found in God's word. It can change your world, and it can certainly change your marriage. Because here's the deal. When we rush to speak, we miss the opportunity to truly hear and understand each other. And you know where that leads. You've been there before. It often leads to fights. But when we slow down and we just really focus on listening, we create this space for a deeper connection and harmony. So what's this number one habit that transforms marriages? It's active listening. And before you start thinking, oh my goodness, yes, I know all about active listening. I got it. I already know how to do that. I need you to know that you're most likely doing it wrong. And even if you're somehow doing it 100% correct, I mean textbook perfect, which I guarantee that you're not, but even if you somehow were, toward the end of this video, I'm going to give you an additional tip that will make your active listening way more powerful. So stick around. Active listening is more than just hearing words. It's about truly understanding what your spouse is saying, feeling, and needing. It's about making them feel valued and important. When you practice active listening, you foster a deeper emotional connection. Your spouse feels heard, respected, and loved. And this depth of connection is what strengthens the bond between you and your spouse. It's what makes that marriage that much stronger. But it's not just about connection. It's also about preventing conflicts. So many arguments happen because one person feels unheard or misunderstood, which typically leads them to feel like what they have to say doesn't matter. By practicing active listening, you make sure that both of you fully understand each other. And this reduces misunderstandings and helps resolve conflicts before they ever start. So how do you practice active listening? It's pretty simple, but if you're not used to really listening, it can feel kind of awkward at first. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it step by step. So the The first step is to just be present. And I don't mean just physically being in the same location, but that's certainly important as well. I mean being mentally and emotionally present. This means putting away your distractions. No TV, no phone, no thinking about what you're going to say next in response. Just focus on your spouse. Give him or her your full attention. Think of it this way. Jesus taught us to love one another as much as we love ourselves. Being present is a powerful way that you can live out that love, showing your spouse that they are more important than your cell phone, social media, or any other distraction. This is a great reminder that you love them. Because here's a secret that probably isn't so much of a secret. Words aren't enough. You can tell your spouse all day long that you love them more than anything else in the world, but if your actions don't show it, then you're pretty much wasting your breath and pretty much wasting your time. Imagine you're at a concert, but instead of listening to the music, you're on your cell phone. You're physically there, but you're missing out on the whole experience. The same thing happens in marriage. So don't just show up, be there mentally and emotionally. The second thing I need you to do is use nonverbal cues. These are just as important as the words that you say. Things like nodding, maintaining eye contact, and having an open posture signal to your spouse that you are listening. Remember, your actions often speak louder than your words, just as the Bible calls us not to only love in word, but in deed and truth in 1 John 3:18. Our nonverbal cues are a great way to show love and respect to our spouse through actions. Think of it as being a mirror. If your spouse is sharing something serious, your body language should reflect the same seriousness. If they're sharing something exciting, your body language should show that you're excited too. Now here's where things start to get a little more fun. Reflective listening is about paraphrasing or summarizing what your spouse has said to make sure that you've understood them correctly. This might feel awkward at first, but trust me, it is so powerful. Let's say your spouse says, I've had such a stressful day at work, and I feel like I'm carrying all the weight by myself. Instead of just nodding like a bobblehead, you could respond with, it sounds like you've had a really tough day, and you're feeling overwhelmed by everything you've had to deal with. This shows that you're not just hearing the words, but you're also understanding their significance. Just make sure that you don't talk over them in order to reflect what they have said back to them. That will probably just make things worse. This is a way of showing humility and putting others before yourself. As Philippians 2 verse 3 reminds us, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. When you reflect what your spouse is saying, you're showing that their thoughts and feelings are important to you. Think of it like being a translator. You're taking what they've said in their language through the lens of their life, and you're repeating it back in your own words, through your own lens, to make sure that you understood it right. It's about making sure that both of you are on the same page. The next step is empathy. And this means not just understanding the words that your spouse is saying, but also connecting with the emotions behind them. Empathy is about putting yourself in your spouse's shoes and trying to feel what they're feeling. Imagine your spouse says, I'm really worried about this upcoming presentation at work. Instead of just saying, you'll do great, gold star, don't worry, you could respond with empathy by saying something like, I can tell that this presentation is really stressing you out. It must be a lot of pressure. This response shows that you recognize and validate their anxiety. You're not just trying to brush it off because it makes you uncomfortable. Empathy is a reflection of the love Christ calls us to show one another. As Romans 12:15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. When you empathize with your spouse, you're sharing in their joys and their struggles, which deepens your connection and strengthens your marriage. This is one of the biggest mistakes that people make in conversation, and it's interrupting. It's easy to do, especially when you're excited or if you think you know what they're going to say, or even more when you're in an argument. But we'll have to do a whole video on the argument side later. But when you interrupt, it sends the message that what you have to say is more important than what your spouse is saying. And that can be really damaging. In Proverbs 18:13, it says, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. Those are pretty intense words. Interrupting is often a sign that we're not truly listening. By allowing your spouse to finish what they're saying, you show that you value what they have to say and more that you respect and love them. Think of a conversation as a dance. If one partner suddenly breaks the rhythm or steps on the other's toes, it ruins the flow. And I should know, Not only was I once a pretty terrible listener to my wife, but I was also an extremely bad dancer. My wife can attest that I have literally stepped on her toes so many times. So let the dance unfold naturally. Don't step on your partner's toes like I always did. Don't interrupt them when they're talking. Just like the right key unlocks the right door, active listening can unlock new levels of understanding and intimacy in your marriage. It's not about doing something grand or complicated. It's about consistently showing up for each other in the small, everyday moments. It's about making sure that your spouse feels heard, valued, and loved. And here's the thing. Those small, everyday moments often come in the form of what this guy named Dr. John Gottman calls bids for connection. These bids are little ways that your spouse reaches out to you, whether it's a comment about their day or a touch on the shoulder or even just a glance, and how you respond to these bids will make or break your marriage. Active listening plays a crucial role in how you can respond to those bids. When your spouse says something to you and therefore makes a bid for connection, it's like they're offering you a key to a deeper intimacy and understanding. And if you turn toward that bid with attention and care, and everything that I'm teaching you, you're using the right key to open the door to a stronger marriage. But if you ignore or dismiss that bid, you are shutting them down and literally destroying your marriage. It doesn't happen instantly, but neither does a volcanic eruption, yet both destroy everything in their path. So think of active listening as the key not only that unlocks the door to a deeper communication, but also ensures that every bid for connection from your spouse is met with attention and love that it deserves. It's these small moments, these everyday bids, that build the foundation of a strong, lasting marriage. Now, I know that you might be thinking, this sounds great, but it also sounds hard to do all the time. And you're right. It can be challenging to do this perfectly all the time. But here's the thing, you don't have to be perfect. Small, consistent efforts are what matter. Start with just one or two of these steps and build from there. The key is to be intentional and to keep practicing these healthy habits. And now, as promised, here's the tip that will take your active listening to the next level. And that's reflective listening with emotional validation. And here's what that means. When practicing active listening, don't just reflect what your spouse says. Reflect the emotions behind their words. Acknowledge and validate their feelings, even if you don't fully agree with the content of what they said. Because I can care that my wife is hurting, and I can acknowledge her pain, even if I think she's wrong. And most likely, I'm the one that's wrong, by the way, in case you're wondering. That's not important. Reflective listening with emotional validation deepens the connection and shows that you truly understand not just her words or his words, but their emotions. And typically, what they feel is way more important than what's being said. Now you know one of the most important habits to build a healthy marriage, but here's the thing. There's another habit that could be doing just the opposite. What if I told you that you might be doing something every day that could literally destroy your marriage? If you want to avoid that, click here to watch this next video and find out what it is, how to avoid it, and how that could save your marriage.